Today, Genesis 48, the adoption of Ephraim and Manasseh. I just so happened to return last week from this very same instance and the adoption of Sophia. And now it just so happens I have the great privilege of preaching on the subject of adoption this morning. So if you would, please open your Bibles with me to Genesis chapter 48. And let's look at this picture of the adoption of Ephraim and Manasseh and its significance. And as we journey here to Genesis chapter 48 and talk about the issue of adoption, let me sort of set the stage for you as to why this is incredibly important for us in this particular time. You may think that adoption is something that is common and has always been common. Let me read this to you from Jerry Bayer, who is a law professor at the Texas Tech School of Law, writing on the basics of Texas intestate succession law, inheritance. He writes, the ability of a person to adopt a non-biological person and cause that person to be treated as a biological child was recognized thousands of years ago. However, the concept of adoption was beyond the grasp of common law attorneys and courts. The idea that a person could have legal parents other than the biological mother and biological father was unthinkable in terms of the law. In fact, English law did not recognize adoption until 1926. Accordingly, modern law relating to adoption developed in the United States, with Vermont and Texas taking the lead when their legislatures enacted adoption statutes in 1850. Practice that has been around for a long, long time, but not a formal legal proceeding until rather recent history. Here's what we know. Adoption, unfortunately, is a forgotten doctrine. And here's the irony in that. We understand adoption because of what the scriptures teach us. For thousands of years, adoption has been happening. Thousands of years. And yet, most people now know what they know about adoption from the legal standpoint. You know, that law, 1850, 1926, very recent historical development. Most people know what they know about adoption from that legal perspective, but know very little about it from a biblical or theological perspective. Also, there has not been much work done for much of church history on the doctrine of adoption as it relates to the ordo salutis, or the order of salvation. Secondly, adoption is on the rise. There have been more adoptions in recent years than we've perhaps ever seen before. Some of the factors for that include the introduction of open adoption. That's one factor that has led to the rise of adoptions. The introduction of open adoptions has made birth mothers more willing to make adoption plans for their children, because no longer is adoption for a birth mother the practice of going to an adoption agency, signing papers, and never ever knowing or hearing anything again about that child. A second factor, the rise of the pro-life movement in response to the culture of death. The rise of the pro-life movement in response to the culture of death. Since Roe v. Wade, there have been over 50 million babies slaughtered in the United States alone. That's just the United States. We murder babies in this country at a rate of over 3,000 per day. And as people become aware of this onslaught. There is a rise in people's desire to do something, which is another reason that adoption is on the rise. Again, also the rise of adoption ministries throughout the country, raising awareness and providing support and financial help. Third thing is this: fear and confusion still abounds on this issue of adoption. People are indeed afraid and confused when it comes to adoption. Factors include, again, the introduction of open adoptions. People are terrified of adoptions because of the introduction of open adoptions. They think that this means that when you adopt a baby that you have to have the birth mother over for dinner every week, when in fact that is not at all what open adoption means. Secondly, movies and news stories about birth mothers coming back to take adopted children. Something that almost never occurs, and because of laws in various states today, it's not even possible. But yet, if there's a movie about it, if there's a story about it, and everybody knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who adopted a baby, and then a year later, stormtroopers came to their house and kicked down the door and took the baby away. Now, nobody knows that person, but they know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who heard about it one time from the person down the street from their second cousin twice removed.